Okay, so I'm going to be going through conditioning today, as per requested. Conditioning is necessary for any team to be successful in the game, right? And if you think about it, how does the enemy base what they're going to do this round? They're gonna be thinking about what you did in the previous rounds and act upon that in anticipation that you're gonna do something similar. So that's like pattern recognition, right? Previous pattern recognition of the enemy team. And that's how you take advantage of that, because it really narrows down the options of what the enemy is going to do. And in a sense, that will be more readable for you and your team in understanding what the likelihood of what they might be doing this round compared to the other rounds, based off what you did in the previous rounds by conditioning. So yeah, conditioning can be as macro as what your entire team is going to be doing for a set amount of rounds, or it could be something as micro as the specific lineup that your server might be doing X amount of times, and you can condition that as well. But today I'll solely be talking about macro, because if I do everything, the video would be too long. So I'll do the micro explanation in another video in the future. Okay, so first example I'm gonna be talking about. Well, let's talk about like conditioning based off success rate, which is like the overarching idea of conditioning, right? If it's working for you, then the enemy is going to think that it's more likely for you to continue doing something. That's like the overarching idea of conditioning. So the first example I'm gonna be talking about is, let's say your attack on Ascent, and the first 2 rounds you're taking B, and the first 2 rounds you successfully take B and kill these 2 people, get the bomb down and win the first 2 rounds, right? So what is the enemy more likely to do on the third round? They're going to shift numbers over in anticipation that you're probably going to do something similar because it's working for you. And they know that their B, they have to swap something up because they can't hold against your B take, right? And in that sense, you can kind of read into what the defense is going to do, that they're more likely to be shifting numbers towards that side of the map because you've had 2 successful rounds towards that side of the map. It wouldn't make sense for them to go stack A after you just destroyed them at B twice, right? So in that sense, you can kind of read into what their positions are more likely going to be, and then you can play into that. For example, you can do like fake B main presence, keep them honest at B, keep these 3 at B, and then go towards A, or just something as simple as that. Okay, so building on the same example, just a slight difference. Let's say the first 1 to 2 rounds you hit B and you get shut down completely by the defense and you can't take the site. So what would the opponent be thinking on like the third round, for example? Okay, our B hold is strong or their B take is weak. There's no reason for us to change our setup. So they'll either keep this setup here, or they would lean numbers towards mid or A in anticipation that you as the attackers know that you can't take B and are going to try default towards the other side of the map to see what's how weak the other side of the map are. So in anticipation of that, they were more likely to keep the exact same default because you can't penetrate their B, or they play numbers towards mid and A in anticipation that you're going to go there because you can't take B. And in a sense, that's also readable if you're conditioning and you're losing the rounds instead of winning them. Okay, second thing I'm talking about is slightly less macro, but like all in all, it's still probably macro. So I'm talking about conditioning during a default. So let's say you want a default for the next 2 rounds, right? To see what the opponent's setup are, and you want to do a default towards B main. And I'm just going to give an example of, let's say your smokes player wants to smoke this off, and you guys want to peek this line into heaven, as this line is blocked off, right? So let's say you do the smoke on the first round. The enemy smokes player says, I'm smoked off, they can walk out. You guys walk out, take the aim door heaven, kill them or don't kill them, doesn't matter. That's the conditioning, that when you do this smoke, that you're going to do this play. That's what the enemy is going to be thinking about from now on if you do that smoke. So for example, the next round, let's say you want to do an A rush, but you want to play into this conditioning. So start of round, you give it a bit of time for you to pretend that you're walking up. You drop this Astro Smoke again, and then the Astro will be like, I'm smoked off. They're probably going to be main again into heaven, because that's previous pattern recognition from this Astra and the enemy team. And then they'll instantly be cautious of the smoke. They'll probably be giving up mid to be able to make sure there's no holes for them to walk into B. And then there might even be rotates just off that smoke. And then based off that, you can know how they're playing, or have a good idea of how they're going to be playing the round. And then you can go, for example, rush A into a potentially weaker site, right? So that is conditioning during a default. Okay, so for the third example, I'm going to be talking about conditioning based off tempo and how fast you want to take the round, right? So, for example, the first 3 rounds, you condition that you're a team that likes to rush, right? So you come up in the first second of the round, and then you rush. And these guys, if they position forward, position back, they'll know that you want to rush, right? And they'll back up the site, and you rush. Let's say you win or lose, doesn't really matter that much. But in their head, they'll know that you like to rush more so than you like to play like slower rounds. Okay, so let's say after 3 rounds, you begin to do like more default T style just to test the other sides of the map, right? Let's say you do mid. And now, for the next few rounds, after the first 3 rounds, it'd be like, oh, okay, they've stopped like rushing. Now we can kind of like test the waters a bit more and try to kill this one guy here, because, for example, let's say you've been doing slow defaults for 2-3 rounds now, and they're like, oh, okay, they've stopped kind of rushing, and they're trying to do their own strat. Let's say they're trying to kill this Viper to get an advantage at the start of the round. And this Viper, having pattern recognition as well, can be like, oh, okay, they've started to position a bit more forward now to get more info on if we're actually rushing or if we're actually defaulting by coming up and try to kill me. And let's say on the 7th or 8th round of the game, you swap up your tempo again because you conditioned that you're going to go back to slower rounds, and now you suddenly go back to fast rounds again. Let's say this guy is dogging at the start of the round as per usual to get the info, and then you suddenly catch him off guard with like double satchel or dash or just something like that. So that's conditioning based off like how fast you're going in the round, how fast you're approaching the round, right? And in a sense, you can kind of guess what the opponent might be doing, or let them, in a sense, fall into like complacency, make them like more comfortable into doing something based off changing your tempo. So if you go fast, they're probably less comfortable to be standing forward. But if you go fast and then you go slow for a lot of rounds, they're probably more comfortable in doing stuff like this because they know they're probably not going to get caught off or killed in the first second of the round, compared to if you just go fast. If you keep going fast, then they're not going to be positioning forward like that. And for the last example, I haven't been really talking about much about defense, so this is applicable to defense, right? Let's say you are a defense team that likes to give up mid and focus heavy on A main and B main for some reason, and you just put the alarm bot mid, right? And let's say the enemy is starting to prod mid a bit more, and they get that info that you like to give up mid. So naturally, you've conditioned that you like to give up mid to the enemies, right? And they break this alarm bot every time, whatever. And let's say after 2 or 3 rounds, you're like, okay, we should probably let's swap up our defense hold, because they know that we like to give up mid. And now suddenly, let's fight mid. So you come up, and now off, let's say, do this. Off the alarm bot, when they break the alarm bot, you can do KO flash, omen blind, down here, and then actually fight them this time. But they won't know that you're there, right? Because in their mind, when they see that alarm bot there, it's clean. There's no one there. You've given up mid. So that's conditioning based off defensive setups. Okay, so the point of conditioning is to trigger a reaction from the enemy team based off of past rounds, right? And in turn, this will make them act a specific way in which will be more readable for you and for your team on what they're more likely to do. Then if they're more likely to do something, for example, safeguard against a specific thing that you've conditioned, then it will only give them a specific number of options that they can probably do to safeguard that specific conditioning. And now, in turn, the narrows down the options of what they might do, and then you can make rounds based off what they might do or what they're more likely to do compared to something else, as if you didn't do the conditioning. So it's a bit to take in, but it's like very crucial to do on a macro level and on a micro level. And today I went through the macro level, and I'll do the micro level probably sometime this week as well. Just explaining how you as a player can condition on a micro basis compared to today, which I talked about like an overall team. So yeah, I've written down everyone's video recommendations, and I'll slowly be making them one by one. So if you have anything you want me to make, just comment below and I will note them down if I think it's a video I can make.